everybody. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Vanessa with Ronkita Design, and I'm here today as part of the Waterloo-In-Place live event series with Waterloo Greenway. Today's live event will be me showing you how to make a face mask by hand sewing and also with no sewing at all. So this will be good for anybody that feels they need some help with a mask, or maybe you just don't know where to source a mask, or you have items in your own home that you're able to do this on your own. So I'm going to be showing you two different versions today. It's going to be kind of like the old school cooking show way. I'll have some parts done, come back in with some finished pieces to kind of guide you along the way. However, I just won't have time to do all the hand sewing pieces in the whole video. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the hand sewing aspect. So when you're hand sewing, you need a few items. So you'll see you need here, let me show you my table. So you'll need some pins, or actually hand sewing needles, sorry. You'll need some pins to keep your fabric together. You can also use clips. If you don't have clips or any of these like sewing tools, you can also use paper clips. You can use binder clips. I've seen so many people use different things that you can kind of get creative with that you have at home. I just happen to have all these tools because I sew for a living. You'll also need some small scissors if you have any, just makes it a little easier. If you don't, regular fabric scissors are fine too. However, these can be a little bit too big and sometimes you can risk cutting your fabric. So smaller scissors are a nice thing to have. I will be using regular thread, just sewing machine thread. You can use button thread. You could also use embroidery floss if you wanted, but you can see the significant difference in how thick they are. So the sewing thread and the embroidery floss are definitely a lot different in thicknesses. But this is more so for embroidery, embellishments, any kind of decoration, which you could also do on your mask. So I'm going to set that aside. Now I also have a chalk marker. This will help me make any marks that I need to have on my mask itself when I get to the sewing part. However, if you don't have it, you can use pins, you can do any kind of marker, you can use a pen because it's going to be on the inside of your mask. Just don't use a Sharpie or anything that would bleed through. Okay, cool. So moving on, this is the first thing we're going to do is you want to start out with a piece of fabric that is 22 by 22 square. Now this will yield enough for 3 masks. So you think, okay, 22 by 22 does seem pretty large. You can see how big that is. However, you can get 3 masks out of it, so it's perfect if you have a family or friends that you need to make some for, or even strangers that you may see that don't have masks, your delivery drivers, people at the grocery stores, people working in hospitals, whoever. If you want to do this, this is a great way to kind of get more for your more out of your fabric. So you want 22-inch squares, so this is 22 inches wide by 22 inches tall. And then what you're going to do is you're going to fold up from the bottom. Now this fabric has a direction to it because the mice are facing a certain way. Totally fine, it's not a big deal. Yours doesn't have to have direction. This is just a piece I cut. So you're going to fold up from the bottom about 7 inches, and you'll see that I'm able to measure here. This is at 6. That's about 7. So this is going to be essentially folding it almost in thirds because it's 7 inches, 7 inches, and then the remainder like 7 3/4, 7 1/2, something like that. So that's just kind of what you're going to want to do there. So your first step is going to cut this piece off. So you're going to cut off here, cutting off the folded edge. Now you can do it if you have sewing tools. You can use your ruler and your rotary cutter and just line it up and cut that off straight there. Not a big deal. You can also use your scissors, which I'm going to do. I'm going to do all of this the same way that I would think other people would want to do at home that didn't have access to everything that I do. That's the key part of this event, is I want to make sure that it reaches people that are able to do this without all the fancy tools and notions. So this is enough for another mask of its own, but you will notice the way you actually fold it, these guys will be sideways, but really it's not a big deal. But that's the excess. Now here's my piece that I just cut off that's folded, you can see. Now all I'm going to do is fold this in half horizontally, and I'm just going to cut it in half. So then I get two pieces there too. Okay, so now I have two pieces that are folded over in half. Now, again, I think I mentioned this last time, but just to kind of, if you saw my pillow cover upcycle class or workshop, what we did is you always want to make sure you have the right sides of your fabric facing each other when you're sewing, because you're sewing inside out. So this is the right side of the fabric because this is the side I want to see. This is the wrong side of my fabric. This is the part I don't want to see because it's muted and it's just not as vibrant. So I'm going to be flipping these right sides together. And you can see the folded edges on the bottom. So here's the folded edge. These are my 3 cut edges here. So this is the extra one. I'm going to put that one aside. So this is where we start. So this guy's going to go away because I've already started the process over here for y'all. Let me get my needle. So you can see here, I'm going to make my mark because I need to have an opening for turning and for flipping. So I need to make sure I'm going to be sewing around here and around here, but I'm going to leave an opening so I can turn it. So I just want to mark it. Again, you can use a pen, you can use pins if you want. You can use anything to mark it so that way you know do not sew here. But just don't use a Sharpie or anything that will bleed through. So when it comes to sewing, there's a couple of other things you can do when it comes to hand sewing. There's all different types of stitches. Now, to make your tailor's knot on your needle and thread, I actually, if you don't know how to do that, I actually have a video on my YouTube page to show you how to do that I can share with you later. But that way, if you don't know how to make a knot on your needle with your needle and thread, I can show you that. But there are several stitches that you can do for hand sewing. So with this, you can just do your running stitch, your back stitch. This is kind of like a running stitch. It's just going to be going down, through, up and down. So essentially you're getting stitches that literally, it's a little hard to see, sorry, that literally just run across. So I'm going to do a few. However, I'm going to show you a different technique that might be kind of cool, that might almost make it a little faster. So when you go down, instead of pulling your needle all the way through the back side like this, which is usually what we do to get our running stitch, instead of doing that, you're going to, and then coming back up, instead of doing that, over and over, going down and up, you can actually, oh, and I caught my thread there. You can actually just take your needle, go in, and you can just do the tiniest on the back end, the tiniest little scoop. Let me move my camera a little bit. Scoop it up, come up, then go down, scoop it down, come up. It's a little hard to see, I'm sorry. Scoop it down. So essentially you can kind of see that I'm just picking up stitches and puckering them on my needle all at once. So it kind of looks like this, right? But then when I pull my needle through, there's my stitches. So it's a little hard to see kind of with the white light. Sorry, let me see if I can adjust that. So you can see here that I have a lot more stitches in place than what I would have if I would have gone up and down, up and down. So I'm able to just go through, pick it up, scoop, and you always want to go up and down, up and down. The section that you're exiting, the side that you're exiting is the same side you're going to be entering for the next stitch. So that way you don't do a loop around and get your thread caught. Again, you can see here, these are all on my needle. right here. And then I just pull it through. And there's my stitches. So there's that. And again, that would take a little bit of time for us to do the whole thing. So I'm going to show you. This is where I'm at now. So I have already gone through, this is where I started. I came all the way around, turned my corner. This was where my mark was. Let me mark it, head on the other side. And so I created a knot here because I finished my stitches and I wanted to have a knot so it wouldn't come through. Now you could make smaller stitches than this. I just did this as I was going along doing the test piece and also so you could see it. You can do smaller stitches or closer stitches. You can also do the back stitch, which is a little bit tighter of a stitch. But you can see I sewed here, here. I jumped. I did not sew in the center. I went down here. I started again, and I went down. And now I'm going to finish this piece here. Put my thread back on my needle. And then I'll show you all the next step. So if you have any particular questions or anything that comes up that you may not be sure of at the time while I'm going through this, please feel free to type them in the comments and I'll address them if I'm able. So there you go. There's my last few stitches. Now when you're making your knot, you want to make sure you do 2 in the same place roughly so you can get a nice strong knot. So there, I would do that there. There'd be a knot. I have my stitches here and here, you can see, and there's my opening. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn it. So I'm going to flip it. Now you want to be a little careful with this. An easy way to flip things is to stick your thumbs in the hole and use your fingers to kind of pinch it and push it through. A lot of people want to reach into the hole and pull the fabric out, and it really makes it harder. So just reach through and kind of tuck it in, push it out with your fingers. Poke your corners with your fingers, you can see that. Get all your corners. You want to make sure all your corners are nice and poked out. And this will also give you the opportunity to see if you have any holes. Maybe you missed something, maybe something tore, maybe your stitch wasn't strong, and you have the opportunity to see that. So there's this. Now remember, we have this hole here where we flipped, or where we had to have it for flipping. So you will hand stitch that closed, but I'm not going to do that during the video today. But you would need to close that as well. So that's done. So now we're right side facing out on both sides. All of my sides are stitched. We'll stitch that hole closed in a moment. So I'm going to set that aside for the next step. So the next step would be, actually I'll use this one. For the next step, you would be doing the pleating, because you can see that from this example, when it's pleated, it's just tucks. So you can see how they're tucked over each other. But what that does is that allows it to go over your face. So it allows for some movement. So these will actually sit underneath your chin and over your nose. And depending on the size, this is a kid size that I started making. Depending on the size, which would be the width, you can see this is much more narrow. That's why I know it's a kid size. So this would be for my niece. She's about 5, because her face isn't as wide as mine. But it still provides the same amount of coverage top to bottom. So that way she has her nose covered and her chin. So the pleating, again, is just tucks. So different sizes of, or different heights that you start with can determine how many tucks you have or how tight you want your tucks. You can see this is another example of one that I've made, a different style. But this one has about 3 or 4 tucks too and pleats. This one has the same. And then all you want to be able to know for sure is really the width and the height is the most important thing. So we're going to go this direction for this guy because this is going to be a little bit more narrow. The other ones that we have here are a little bit wider, and you'll see that. But the main purpose of this is to show you how to do the tucks. This was made with the leftover piece after I had cut the previous 2. So you can also know that with the leftover pieces, Sometimes it's more useful for a child's mask. It might be more narrow, but you can gauge on how wide it is based on your cutting and based on what you do. So what you'll do is you're going to take your pleats, and some people like to do it where you fold it in half, create a mark, define your halfway point, and then fold it again to create a quarter point. Fold it from the bottom to create another quarter point. I just usually do it with creases, but you can do it however you want. You can use pins or whatever marking tools you want. And then what you can do is you can actually use that as your starting point. So what I'm going to do is reach under, I'm going to pinch it between my fingers, and I'll show you a side view too. So I'm literally going to pull it up. I'm going to be going this way. I'm going to be going down. This is the bottom and this is the top. I'm going to get it. I'm going to pinch it between my two fingers, about 1/2 inch. I'm going to get it. I'm going to pinch, and I'm just going to bring the fold down. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to clip it into place so it doesn't move, because I want these to stay in place. So again, you can use paper clips, pins, any kind of bobby pins, anything that you have that you can keep your pleats in place until you sew it, because these will fall out of place. You have to keep them in place somehow. I'm going to grab my second mark and come down. Clip again. Now the nice thing about making your own masks is you can make them to whatever size you need. This one is going to be a little taller. It's going to be a little taller and narrower. The other ones can be wider and shorter. You do want at least a good amount of height of a finished, maybe like anywhere from 4.5 to maybe 6 inches at least in height. So that way it covers everything. So when it's fully stretched out, you've got a good amount of coverage. And then I'm going to take my third pleat, grab it, pinch, place it here, and go through like that. So you can see there that it's already taking shape. So what I'm going to do now is I need to stitch along these pleat lines to keep them in place, because when it's sewn, then you'll see how it like comes out like an accordion, and that's where it's able to actually cover your face. You can actually already see that there. So it's pretty neat. So I'll leave that there. And you would start stitching right there. I like to do the double thread for this particular project when I'm hand sewing. It's a little bit stronger. You could also use button thread. Button thread tends to be pretty strong as well. So you would just come up from behind, and I'm doing about 1/4 inch from the edge. It's about what I did for the hand stitching too, for the seam allowance, which is the distance between your stitch line and the cut edge or your edge of your fabric. So I'm going to be doing about 1/4 edge distance here because I want to get those pleats. So I'm going to do this stitch too, same type of stitch. It's a little harder sometimes when you go over the pleats because it's a little thicker, but you can kind of see the direction that I'm going with it. Now you can see this, and I'm going to take this off because my hands are going to be holding this in place. My fingers are. I'm going to come up. Now I'm just going to do regular stitching here because it's so thick. You can see how many layers it is. So you can see there the folds and the pleats from the back side and how they work. So it's important you kind of do that. And if it's, you know, it takes some practice to kind of get used to it. So just take your time with that in general. But you can kind of see the direction, like where we're going with it. Now, if you are unsure of what kind of material you can use that you have around your home, you can always feel free to always reach out to me. You can email me or shoot me a DM on one of my channels. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. So, or even now, if you have any questions. So essentially, I would be doing this. I'd be hand stitching all the way up, and then all the way up this side. You don't have to go around the top and bottom. You're just going to go around the 2 sides to keep your pleats in place. However, if you wanted to go on 4 sides, you could if you wanted to create a specific look, and then you would be able to close your opening there. So there's that. And next, you can see, ta-da, I've already hand stitched almost all of this and almost put on the ties because I didn't know how long it was going to take me, and I didn't want to lose time as I want to show you the other version. So for this particular version of the mask, you can see I used just ribbon that I had around the house. So you're going to want 4 pieces of ribbon. You can also purchase a pack of shoelaces. Shoelaces are really affordable and they're really long. If you get a pack of, I think they're like 45 or 54 or something like that inches long, you can just cut them in half and you would have plenty to have 4 ties. Your ties are going to need to be anywhere from like 16 to 18 inches in length. So that way you have enough to tie around your head. You need it to tie around the back of your head and then around the part of your neck for this particular one. So you can see here that I did my hand stitches and I also stitched on my ribbon on the edges. So I'm going to finish this guy here. Now you can use shoestrings, you can use ribbon, you can use anything really that you want to tie around yarn. You can also create ties out of old t-shirts. It's called t-shirt yarn or t-shirt string. You can make that as well, which is really cool because I'm sure, you know, if you've made something with t-shirts and you have extra pieces, you can use the rest of that. So, you know, we all have stuff around our home that could probably be used for this. That's not specifically craft materials. So, all right, so here we go. I'm going to tie my knot. Oops, broke that off. So let me trim that. And so here's my mask with the 4 ties. And you can see that, and normally I would use thread that would match more. However, I just used the blue so that way you could see it more from the actual on the camera, so that we could see the actual stitches and all of that, so that we could get a better idea. So you can see here, generally you want your pleats to be facing downward because it does make it easier and more comfortable on your face when they're facing down, so that way when it's open like that, rather than if they're facing up, these pleats underneath on the back side can go into your, can really bother your nose and breathing. So always make sure your pleats are facing down, and you just open it up and you just tie it around, and there you go. Now it will take a little bit of time because there's a lot of hand sewing involved, and that's why I kind of expedited it by having other pieces pre-done, but that's for you to see. So you can see here, there's also other versions. I made this version with the pleats, but also with the ties of the same fabric. If you have extra fabric, you're welcome to do that as well. So if you have elastic, you can also tie in some elastic for the ear pieces here as well. It just go around the ear loops. So those are options that you have as well. And for the next mask, we're going to talk about options for ear loops that are not elastic with something you may have at home. All right, so now the next mask we're going to do is the no sew, like completely no sewing, no hand sewing, no machine sewing, none of that. So hopefully this will be a little easier. You might have already seen this demonstrated. However, if you haven't, I really hope that this will help. So this is a bandana that I purchased from Tawa Ties here in Austin. It's hand printed and she's awesome. So I love this bandana because for a lot of reasons. I wear a lot of bandanas. And so this is the perfect size. It's also 22 inches by 22 inches. That's why with the previous version that I just showed you with the hand sewing, you can also use a bandana that you get like at any store or you may already have. It's the same size. So I wanted to share that with you. It's like this is made for all the sizes. So this is the right side of my bandana. So I want to face it right side facing down. And then literally what you're going to do is you're going to just start folding it in. I'm just probably doing about like 2.5, 3 inches. I'm not really measuring. Just folding it in, folding it up all the way. And this didn't come in all the way, so I'm going to make this a little bit bigger here. Just because I want that to be tucked away. There we go. All right, good. So now you just have seriously like just one long tube. It's 22 inches long and just a couple inches high based on this. So let me get my camera straight. There we go. Okay, cool. So all you have to do with this guy is, so we're going to be using hair ties. You can find these anywhere. There was an issue trying to find them for a period of time because people were going to them so quickly for masks, but now I think they're more available, or you may already have some at home. So you would just use your hair tie, you just slip it on one end, get your other hair tie, slip it on the other end, and then you're just going to take one edge, one of these edges, you're going to open up your little piece here. See how that tube has a little opening? And I'm going to take this guy and bring him in and literally just like shove it in there. You want it in the innermost part of that little tunnel, so it's nice and secure. Now, the nice thing about this version too is that it depends on how wide your head is or how big your head is. You can make it wider or narrower. My head is kind of small, I found out, so I had to make mine a little more narrow, but it was great because I was able to do it and it worked and it was totally comfortable. And honestly, it's very surprising how well this fits. I wasn't quite sure until I did it, but it fits really well, and it does offer a lot of protection because of all the layers. It can get a little warm, but this is great if you have to step outside to the store, if you have to go somewhere really quickly and you're kind of in a pinch. So you kind of get that in there, get that to lay down, and then what happens is you put this on, and this can kind of, let me do it gently since I'm not wearing it. This can kind of open up a little bit on the back end, and this end here, and then you put these hair ties around your ears, so these work as your ear loops. And honestly, it's really secure. It doesn't look like it would be, but it really is. And you can make it wider by opening it up a little bit here if you need to. Which you probably would want to make it cover your mouth. But all of that is just adjusted once you kind of get the rest of it down. This is just going to be narrow to keep it on here because I'm not wearing it. But this is a great way to use a bandana you already have and to actually make something work with what you already have in your home. Now, one cool thing that I wanted to share with you is the owner of Tawa Ties. She was just really excited that we were using her bandana for this because I love her bandana. And she's offering everybody that's watching this a 20% off coupon with the coupon code ronkita.biz20. So it's a limited little coupon for y'all, but so you can get various types of bandanas from her site. So we'll have her Etsy site included in a moment. But these were the two bandanas that I was able to share with you. It was a pretty quick little project. You can see, again, I did do majority of this hand sewing outside of the project simply because I didn't know for sure how long it would take. But you can see here that through one bandana piece, you were able to get 3 bandanas out of one 22 by 22 inch square for your, so those would be great for your family. So now I have extra ones that I need to finish. And then with another bandana that is 22 by 22 inches, you can actually get one nice thick bandana. This has several different layers because of the rolling and the folding. And the nice thing about it too is you don't have to cut it, you don't have to sew it. This, you can just take this apart and use it again as a bandana if you want again later. So nothing with the no-sew one is permanent, so it's pretty nice so that you don't feel like you have to make any long-term commitments. So let me show you, I took my other one off, but let me show you this one that I just made. So you can see here, If you have glasses, it's best to put it underneath your glasses so you don't get the fog. If your glasses are sitting on top of it, you won't be fogged up. So just tie it back here. And then you can see the pleats, they're able to be pulled down underneath my chin. And there you have it. It doesn't go too far back because they're not super wide. You can make it wider if you want, but the main thing is that it's covering my nose and my mouth and underneath my chin. So these are two great options for you. And if you need more ideas on how to make a bandana out of other things from your home, again, feel free to reach out to me with any questions, any comments that you may have. And I'm happy to send any other information if you don't happen to have anything like any fabric or any bandanas at your home. So that was a pretty short series or pretty short event for the series today. I really want to thank you all for being here. Waterloo Greenway is a great organization. They're a local nonprofit here in Austin, and they're working with the city of Austin to create 35 acres of connected green space in downtown Austin along Waller Creek. So they're a very important organization, and I'm glad you're able to follow them and check them out. So I also want to thank the sponsors for Waterloo Greenway, the BBVA PAL Foundation, the Susan Vaughn Foundation, Waterloo Sparkling Water, and the Word Foundation. So if you have any questions or would like more information on my sewing classes or lessons, please let me know. You can follow me on Instagram or Facebook as Ronkita Design. And also feel free to DM me anytime if you have any questions or just seeking advice. I also want to thank Frida Friday and the committee and the whole team for referring me to Waterloo to do these event series. I really am super excited and glad to be here again. So hopefully I'll see you again soon. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks. Bye.